I picked the wrong bed, Winnie. This bed is not big enough for the two of us. Do you want me to change it for the one that is? Hold on, I have to make sure that Winnie fits. Come on. Hey friends, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza. This very particular older lady is Winnie and back in her spot. You gonna do a lay down first? I mean, you can do you. No, I moved everything around so you'd be comfortable and you're leaving me. Sounds great. And back in her spot. There she is. There's the cheese. All right, you're back. By all means, come on in. No, I'll scoot over. You get comfy. We are here to do a recent reads. Why? Because I am so far behind on these. Absolutely crazy far behind. I've been trying for a little while now. When you just moved the camera. I've been trying for a little while now to catch up. So here we go. Let's go through some books that I want to say I read recently, but that's not true. It's just not true. First things first. It's a good one. I approve. Let's do this. The first book we're going to talk about is Snake Eater. This is the most recent release, or was the most recent release at the time I was reading it. I believe there is a new book out by this author that I am waiting for from the library. I picked this up thinking it was Kingfisher's newest horror release, and it ended up being more of a fantasy with some spooky elements. I feel a lot of this author's books kind of ride that line, and so this was what I would define as more of a modern fantasy, because like it's not really an urban fantasy. It's definitely maybe magical realism. I don't know. I will not put this author into a box. They can do whatever they want. But this is the story of Selena, and she is fleeing her past life. She was in a relationship that wasn't necessarily over the top abusive, but was not good for her. The person that she was with was very controlling, and they made Selena feel small and insignificant. And over time, Selena just really started feeling bad about herself. So she has fled to the house of her recently deceased aunt. Selena was at one point close with this aunt, but when her aunt passed away, it had been some time since she'd spoken to her, and she lived in a incredibly micro tiny small town out in the middle of the desert in, I believe, New Mexico. So Selena shows up in this new town with nothing but the clothes on her back and her dog Copper, and these two end up integrating themselves into this small town and maybe accidentally angering some of the local gods. This was a really quick read. It was definitely different than I thought it was going to be. There are kind of some suspenseful moments in this, but for the most part, this felt very like fantasy folklore heavy over being very horror. Like with all Kingfisher books, I had a decently good time. I like who this author puts usually in the forefront, who is usually the focus of the story. This author likes to pick older characters or more awkward characters, or just the people that would never usually be the main character in the story, and put them front and center and let you experience things from their point of view. I ended up giving this 4 stars, but it's hard for me to give Kingfisher anything less than that. I really enjoy their stories. The next book I picked up after that was Maggie's Grave. This was me reading more from an author that I had really enjoyed. Last year, I picked up the Haar, which is definitely a creature feature and leans towards gross horror, but also was one of the most heartfelt horror books I have ever read, and I truly enjoyed it. And so I've made it my mission to pick up some more things from this author. No, we can do it like this. Winnie's gonna sit here until Winnie's done sitting here, okay? So I made it my mission to read some more of this author's backlist. And the one that everybody was screaming at me to pick up next was Maggie's Grave. I picked this up and I had a really good time. I don't think this reinvents the wheel. I think this does a great job at being a slasher in an incredibly small town. But the moments of humor in this that happen, there is one moment in particular where you 1000% feel the record skip and everyone look around like, what is happening in this room? And then it devolves into carnage. It is a really bloody, awful, gory slasher good time. This is the story of a group of 4 teenagers who are the last 4 young people in this slowly dying Scottish town. There is nothing in this town for these kids to do. They basically spend every single night at the bowling alley drinking beers with the guy that owns the bowling alley. There's no other teenagers left. The town has slowly emptied out over time. People have moved away. And so there's just not much left in this town for these young people to do. I think they're all like 19, 20 years old, somewhere in there. They're older teenagers, young adults. But there is a opening to the story before we even get to the teenagers where we hear the backstory of the local legend. There was a woman who lived secluded outside of a town many, like 100 years prior, who was accused of being a witch and murdered within her own house. You experience this whole ordeal through Maggie's eyes. You then jump forward and you're living in the time period with these 4 teenagers, and the burned out husk of Maggie's house still remains just outside of town, and it's now local lore, urban legend type stuff. When one day a new American, a young woman who is, for the sake of being nothing else than new, very exciting, comes to town and the other young adults wish to impress her, they all head out to look at Maggie's grave. This was carnage. This was absolute carnage. I really enjoyed this, and if you're looking for something that is just violence, but a little bit of revenge, there's some twists, there's some things you should have seen coming, even though you probably won't, and it's pretty straightforward. You want a slasher in a small town where we've basically got 4 young people that we're going to follow Maggie's grave. If you liked the Haar, I think you should give this a try. The next book I picked up after that was The Merge. This, I really don't even remember how I heard about it, but now when I hear people talk about it, I feel like I want them to read it because I want to talk about this so much. This is one of those books where after you finish it, you really wish you did a buddy read because you just want to mentally unload everything you've just gone through. This is what I would call Black Mirror-esque type sci-fi, where we are living in a somewhat future world where there has been a technological advance called the merge. It is a solution to overpopulation. Basically, people can be merged into consciousnesses. So 2 people go in and a host body is chosen, and then they merge consciousnesses. I don't know why that's so hard. But basically, you go in and merge consciousnesses. So 1 body, 2 minds. This has been done with somewhat great success. These people that are merged are given a lot of benefits within society because they've gone through this process to help alleviate the pressure on resources and the world in general. We have a new group of people with our main character, Grace, who is going to go through this process of the merge. This is a new way of doing the merge, and she's in this group of people that are all kind of these new versions of the merge, but Grace is going through the merge to merge with her mother, Amelia, who suffers from Alzheimer's. This is marketed towards her as a way to hang on to her mother as her mother loses her memories, her mind. As she's losing her mother, this is a way to keep the little bit of her mother that's still there as this disease takes hold of her. Here's what I will say about this. I ended up giving this 4 stars, but it is the latter half of this book that will do it for you. There's a lot of commentary that's going on in the beginning of the book. The process that they do to merge is called the combine or the combined, but I kept reading it as combined, which is a farm tool used, I believe, to tear up. So there was this whole feeling of this being a machine type thing. There's a lot of imagery in this that if you're paying attention, you might be able to see where it's going, but I am someone that has the superpower where I can usually see where things are going, and I did not see this ending until it was sitting right in front of me. The ending of this will literally haunt you. That is how I will put it. This is the kind of book where the first half, you're like, okay, yes, you're getting to know all the people that are going to go through the process of the merge. You're getting to know Grace. You're getting to know Amelia. You're getting a little backstory, a little more. Our eyes are opening. And then the second half through the end of this book will literally haunt you for days. I really wish I had read this along with someone so I could instantly talk about this because it was the second half of this book. I feel like when you're reading the first half of this book, you might almost feel like DNFing it because you feel like you've read this before, and you haven't. At least I hadn't. I really enjoyed The Merge, and if you're looking for something that has that sucker punch that some Black Mirror type stories have, this 1000% is worth your time. The next book I picked up after that was Of Monsters and Mainframes. This, I will fully admit, the only reason I even gave it a glance is because the cover is very bright and very different, and I was interested. This is touted as classic horror stories in space, AI and classic literature all mixed together. And while that is true, I ended up actively really disliking this book, but I will put an asterisk to that. I listened to this on audio, and whoever did the editing for the audiobook should lose their job immediately. They left in every single deep breath that every single narrator took. If you have ever edited any audio, even if you have only ever done it on your phone for 2 seconds, you can see a breath from a mile away. It took me out of the story so hard because every time these narrators would breathe in, you would hear these giant sucks of air. It was so awful. It was one of the worst produced audiobooks I've ever listened to. This story in general is just fine. We're traveling on a spaceship, and in a vignette type way, you get different stories involving classic literature, monsters / horror tropes. There's stories inspired by werewolves and Dracula and Frankenstein and all of these things, but they're also worked in where you are getting the main point of view being the AI of this spaceship that keeps getting decommissioned and recommissioned because it's seen as a haunted ship. No one else has had this many problems except for this ship. I think if I hadn't listened to it in the worst audiobook form that ever existed, maybe I would have thought this was fun. A lot of people in the reviews said this felt like a B movie in space, and that's what I wanted, but that's not what I got from the reading experience I had. The next book I picked up after that was Carl's Doomsday Scenario. This is the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. If you have not heard of Dungeon Crawler Carl, honestly, it's impressive. It's impressive at this point that you consume book content and you haven't heard about Carl and Donut. The first book in the series, Dungeon Crawler Carl, is the story of Carl. He is an average guy. I believe he works in the Coast Guard. He's just gone through a terrible breakup with his cheating awful ex, and she has not come to pick up her stuff yet, including her very fluffy Persian cat named Princess Donut. When one night at like 4 a.m, Princess Donut gets out an open window into this freezing cold night. Carl runs out trying to grab her. He doesn't even have time to put pants on. The man throws on a jacket and some Crocs, runs outside just in time for the end of the world. Carl and Princess Donut just happen to be in the exact right place to survive the incoming alien apocalypse. Basically, these giant alien corporations run this reality TV show that airs across galaxies where they go to planets and they set up dungeons, and the survivors are then dungeon crawling, trying to survive against all of the obstacles that the alien corporate overlords send their way. So Carl and Donut are now competitors on a reality TV show where life and death is what we're fighting for. In the second book, we have reached a new level. Carl and Donut are now very well versed in certain parts of this world, but they're still trying to figure out how everything works. They still have to keep themselves popular in order to get views. It's very Hunger Gamesy in that way, where having a large viewing audience of a particular crawler will then have them receive special loot crates and boxes. This is a lit RPG, so both Carl and Donut are leveling up as we go along. I didn't love this as much as I liked the first one, but I don't think that I could have ever loved the second one as much as the first. The first was just so fun and different and unlike anything I'd read before. But I definitely liked it enough to continue on reading about Carl and Donut. And if anything that I just said about that book interests you, pick it up. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. The audio is available only on Audible, unfortunately, but it is some of the most fun audiobooks you can get your hands on. The next book I picked up after that was Tender is the Flesh. I actually read this for another content creators book club that they're running over on Fable. I will tag them in the description. You can go check this out. This was my first time reading this book, and if you have not heard of Tender is the Flesh, buckle up, Buttercup. This is a lot. So this is a cannibalism book. This is really a commentary on the meat industry as a whole, because the background of this story is that some sort of virus or illness has infected all of the livestock that we would usually consume as humans. All the pigs and the cows and the chickens are inedible, to the point where they made everyone put down almost all animals, like cats and dogs too. Everybody gone. Just out of here. So because people couldn't just, I don't know, decide to eat beans and vegetables, they decided to start eating people. And it is a corporate, there is all sorts of wheels and cogs. This is not just one group of people catching people and eating them. This is business. This is big business. And we have our main character, Marco, who works for a slaughterhouse, which is horrific, but he also has to travel to different places involved with the corporate machinations of being cannibals, all the way from like a local butcher shop to higher up where these people are bred. This is so awful, and it's supposed to be. You are absolutely just at every turn, something is going to gut you in this book. And the ending will make you so mad. And if it doesn't, I don't know if we can be friends, because you should be mad. You should definitely be mad. But I think this book is one of those books that is incredibly hard to read, and it's trying to be. I get the message that we were getting from this book. I think it was incredibly heavy-handed, but that was the whole thing. That's the whole thing. We are definitely talking about this author is most likely a vegetarian, but also wants you to see just how awful the meat industry is, but also just how awful humans are. And that was my takeaway. Everything's awful. Humans are awful, and everything they do is pretty nasty too. The next book I picked up after that was The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. This is a short horror story collection. And I don't know if I had read anything from this author. I think there was another book that I was interested in, but this one was available from the library when I was looking for it, so I picked it up. I ended up giving this 3 stars overall, but anybody who's read a short story collection knows that some of the short stories are really going to be great, and some of them are usually just kind of fine. This was overall a really interesting read. What I will say about this is that how these short stories work in this is you start off the story, and as it climbs and climbs and climbs, and as soon as you get anything that is horrific or any sort of reveal, which feels like a midway point to most short stories, that's when the story usually ends. I feel like worked in most of the stories, your mind trailing off and continuing the threads of where this story would go is probably what's going to scare you more than anything. But the author probably didn't feel like they needed to give you more than the reveal of what the heck is going on in each short story. There was a lot of bodily fluids in these stories. Some of them were incredibly gross, others not so much, but in general, there was a lot of poop. There was a lot of poop in these stories, I feel like. If you like short horror stories, I don't see this being a bad read. It was an incredibly short book. The next book I picked up after that was The Message. After reading Tender is the Flesh, I was really interested in the commentary on language, how politics or corporations can use language to really paint the picture that people are seeing. So instead of calling the people that people were eating in this book, hey, you're eating a people, I believe they called it, what did they call it? They call it special meat. How naming things and the way we talk around things can really affect how people view it and rationalize it. And I found that incredibly interesting and was looking for more books that talked about how language and the way we talk around things really influences how people see things, but also interact with things. And this book came up a lot. This is an author that I hadn't read from before, but I have seen their work and decided to pick it up. This is it's not really essays so much as this is a nonfiction about this author talking about 3 very distinct things, but they all work together within the narrative of language and how we speak around things and our relationship to things. This author is Black, and so he speaks about going to Africa as an American and being a Black man in Africa and the experience of that, knowing that he was going to the place where his ancestors had been taken from. He then also speaks about being a teacher and dealing with students. He then speaks about his experience in going to Israel pre the war breaking out, but not too pre the war breaking out, and his interactions with both the Muslims and the Jews and how the Israelis were treating the Palestinians, and and how he related that to being a Black person in America and the verbiage around all of that. It was really, really interesting. It's really well done. This author has an amazing intuitive voice, but also holds themselves accountable for past mistakes and the learning through time and experience. I listened to this. I thought it was a beautiful listen. Is how I would put it. But if you're like me and wanted to go down a rabbit hole, there you go. I feel like a lot of people are doing curriculums, especially this year, which I find absolutely inspiring, but I do not have the brain or the bandwidth right now to create my own curriculum. But I have decided when I read something like Tender is the Flesh and I want to have more conversations about something that was a theme within, I will then seek out another book in another genre, preferably nonfiction or a classic. That is how I am doing my own curriculum, even though it is not. This is very fluid and it's kind of happening how it's happening. So I can't hold myself to any sort of rigorous curriculum because I just am not that type of person. But if you are doing that, just know that I think you're so cool and I'm super jealous. The next book I picked up after that was The Alchemy of Secrets, and this is the newest fantasy series by Stephanie Garber, who I've tried to read her books in the past, but they just haven't really worked for me, which I thought was because they're YA, and that's fine. Like, I am not really usually in a YA mood, so it's okay. If they're not written for me, I don't have to like them, because they're not written for me. But I picked this one up because it said it was like old Hollywood, a deal with the devil. This was like fantasy, but like 1920s Art Nouveau. This was very similar in nature to the movie National Treasure by Nicolas Cage. But I ended up giving this, I think, I like 2.75 stars. It was teetering back towards I didn't like this. I'm honestly really surprised that I made it all the way through. This was National Treasure, but our main character is like a super cute blonde boho girl living in Los Angeles. She's in college and she's taken a class on the folklore and kind of local magic of Los Angeles, cryptids and urban legends that don't really exist, but exist in the world of this book. And she happens upon what she believes is one of the urban legend, magical folklore mysteries, which sets her down a path of unraveling all of these things that are hidden in the underbelly of Los Angeles being magical. Every single man that walked onto the screen was described like a love interest in this, and it started to get infuriating. I was like, girl, not every man that walks in should have you wanting to drop it to the floor. Like, that is all, like, what are we doing? Get it together, get your hormones checked. Like, something's happening. You're in danger. I understand that we might get a cute boy or two, but I was beyond caring at one point. If another man walked in slow motion and we got a description from his top to his bottom, and he smelled like sandalwood and mystery, like, I could not care. I think that the running through, finding all this folklore stuff, being, national treasury about it, should have been much cooler than it was. Our main character didn't really know all of this stuff aside from what she'd learned in class, so there should have been more, awe around the fact that some of this stuff was real, but she was just too worried about all the cute boys she was meeting. I really didn't end up liking this, and I just don't think this author is for me, and that's fine. There are going to be people that love this because they want every man that walks on the screen to be a love interest. And I'm happy for you because you found a book you like. But I will not be continuing on this series, and I think I might be giving up on this author for good. The last book we're going to talk about is Eynhallow, and this is the story of Agnes. She lives on a teeny tiny island. She is not too satisfied with her life. When one day a mysterious man comes and he rents this secluded estate that no one's been to in a very long time, and Agnes ends up becoming entangled with this man by bringing him food and checking on him and having general empathy for other human beings. It just so happens the man that showed up was Victor Frankenstein, and we all know how Victor Frankenstein figures stuff out. This is a retelling of Frankenstein. But we are getting a small period of time where I don't believe, it's been a long time since I've read Frankenstein, but I don't believe this time period was truly accounted for or was just a few sentences in the story. It is now fleshed out, and we find out about Frankenstein and Agnes, and she has this desire to leave this place, but she has children that she cares for, and so she doesn't want to leave her children behind. But Victor, with his science and his stuff and him being Victor. This is a gothic Frankenstein retelling. I really liked it. It was sad, it was somber, it goes the directions you think it is, but it is twisting and turning a little bit of that story. It's sad, but I think Frankenstein in general is kind of sad. But that, kids, is where we are going to end this recent reads, because I'm tired of talking and Winnie's been laying on my leg this entire time and now it's asleep. You want to see? Yes. Winnie is incredibly comfortable right where she is. If you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there wherever you are, and I'd love to hear about them. And I promise to be a little bit better about catching you up on my recent reads. We're gonna catch up. I mean, I'm gonna keep reading, but we're gonna catch up. And I'll see you next time.